Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to the Near Memo with Greg and Mike today. And we're going to be talking about two things today instead of three because there are two of us, although that doesn't always hold. We'll sneak in other stuff at the margins, but basically...
we always sneak other stuff in at the margins.
Yes. And
we are margin sneakers.
Yes, margin sneakers here. Anyway, so Mike is going to be talking about AI and maps and sort of what the future may hold there. Google's done some stuff with Google Maps and AI and is increasingly trying to leverage AI to engage users and hold on to users. And then I'm going to be showing some slides from some research I did at my other program, Dialogue, about search and AI that are pretty interesting. And we'll talk about what the findings may mean. And I think this is the first place that they're being presented outside of our clients over there. So, Mike, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. Hopefully the howling in the background is just a typical Western New York winter storm. It'll add a little ambiance. I'm not sure if you can hear it or not, but it's pretty loud.
I can hear it. I was wondering
yes,
what that
the
was.
wind is blowing. We are experiencing lake effect storms, which I love because it means I can go cross country skiing tomorrow. You know, everybody thinks it's terrible, but I'm all in. Anyways, James Killick runs a blog called Map Happenings. Very interesting character. Spent his whole adult life in traditional and digital geography with Esri, with various other companies, MapQuest and Ultiplast with Apple. Very knowledgeable about the history. He writes a great blog, and I love reading his stuff.
Yeah.
So he did, he has been, a year ago, he explored the question of whether AI was doing anything, whether it got geography. He, at the time, said it didn't even know which way was up, let alone which way was left or right. He did some experiments recently with ChatGPT and even with Google. And we've talked about the failures of Google in terms of slightly more complex inquiries, even though Google claims that they are now bringing AI into maps. You try to do, like if I try to do a query, show me all the car repair places between here and Buffalo, I can't do that. And I live 80 miles from Buffalo. Or show me open Indian restaurants on Sunday. Those kinds of queries, these more complex queries that AI should be able to handle. He does a couple of tests with that. It doesn't. He also said, then he tried to get it to map and it doesn't. But he there are issues with LLMs that they don't have enough knowledge, specific knowledge, and they're not constrained enough with geographic knowledge to do a good job, and thus they still make things up, and it's hard to constrain them. He did say he's seen some. Did you want to say something? Sorry.
Well, I wanted to say the local search experience is, let's call it mediocre, but it's not abysmal in my experience. And so one can anticipate that this will improve, but that's what you were going to talk about.
Yes. And so he does show some examples of professional experiments and software of integrating a geoinformation system with a specially trained LLM and a specially trained chatbot so that and he gives an example done by the Turing Institute where they explored how you could use, for example, analyzing air pollution around schools, right? Show us all the schools where the air pollution is bigger or less than it was last year, that kind of thing. So some very sophisticated professional applications that he sees coming out fairly quickly. And he also sees development of these new beyond interfaces beyond natural language. For example, object classification he talks about, and he shows some very interesting examples from Facebook and its use in satellite technology where you can able to identify using text prompts, things in the images. And positioning, and he talks about one of the big positioning problems is when you don't know where you are individually and you try to come out into a new environment like subway or city street, how Google is trying to do that. And the problem with what Google is doing is it's just in a very few cities. Apple's doing the same thing. But he points out that Niantic has been able to do it much more broadly, but they are now building a large geographic model where even though they might only have a 2D view through their software of a building, there are training models to build 3D views, because a church is a church, and if you know what the front looks like, you can guess what the side looks like, those kinds of things. So he thinks that that kind of development of a large geo model might do that. And as he looks to the future, where he does think that you should be able to, in the near term, converse with your geospatial app more fluidly, particularly in professional apps, but perhaps in consumer apps. There will be better, visual location where you can point your phone and know exactly where you are in any city. And then he talks about the coming of these geospatial agents that will keep an eye out for the kinds of geographic changes you might be interested in and alert you to it. So he's optimistic, but
yeah, I mean, I think there are just scores and scores of applications for this. I mean, many of them are going to be very specific and industry specific. Taking AI capabilities and combining them with geographic data. It's worth noting that John Hinkie, the CEO of Niantic, I always mispronounce that, which is sort of ostensibly a gaming company, right? They did Pokemon Go and Ingress and other games that are sort of a hybrid real world digital games. He was the head of Google Maps for a long time, and
Google Earth and then Google Maps.
Yeah, he came to Google through the acquisition of the product that became Google Earth.
And Niantic actually started in Google and then was spun out.
Right. It's a separate company, right? So there's some really interesting stuff going on. And one other thing that's sort of tangentially related to this, and we're starting to see the emergence of a kind of a new form factor that seems like it's going to take hold, which is these AI powered augmented reality glasses, sort of exemplified by the Meta Ray-Bans. But now there are
Solo has one.
Yeah, there are several other companies that are building comparably priced, comparably lightweight glasses, which don't make you look like a freak on the street, and with AI have a lot of interesting capabilities and can leverage location to tell you information about where you are. I mean, one example would be tourism, where you're out on the streets of London or something, and you're going by different landmarks or different attractions, and it can alert you to them or talk to you about, give you the Wikipedia entry or talk to you in your ear about what's interesting about this kind of thing. So that's a really interesting sort of parallel universe, and I suspect Apple will develop those glasses as well. I mean, Vision Pro is such a it's
a limited.
It's market. A Ferrari, right? It's a Ferrari, and what people really want is a Toyota Corolla, right, or something they can afford.
Apple gets it's a Ferrari. I mean, they built it so that they could refine the technologies, understand what people are using.
But I mean, imagine Siri with some sort of nice looking augmented reality glasses using the Vision Pro, Vision OS Lite. And you could walk around and get, you could ask questions, you could get information, you could sort of see a visual overlay. Google is got some of these in the works. So it's kind of the return of Google Glass, but the
with a socially acceptable style and presence
and price, right? I mean, Google Glass were like $1,200 or $1,500. Vision Pro's $3,500, and these are $300. People will spend that money. And this is starting to emerge as wearables as a category now is the sort of post smartphone new platform, earpieces, watch, and then these glasses, I suspect. And that's going to be a really interesting area to watch.
It is. What isn't clear to me is that these will ever, at least as we see them, will supplant the need for a phone.
No. They won't. They won't fully supplant the need for a phone, but in certain contexts, they'll offer a superior experience.
Right, but it's a supplemental experience, not an exclusion. It's not like exclusive, right?
Because you need the phone for the connectivity.
Perhaps, right, or just need it for the information, or for the large language models that run on the phone, or whatever you need it for. Right? It's not clear to me that there's any form factor that is yet that we can see that might potentially replace the need for the phone. These are complementary.
I mean, Google Watch has a standalone Google Watch. Oh, not enough coffee this morning. Apple Watch has a standalone device, and so that's conceivable. You could imagine that in glasses happening. I feel compelled do you want to say anything more about any of that stuff?
No.
Okay.
You feel compelled.
I feel compelled.
I'm curious about what?
No, I think this is not something I'm capable of really talking about with any degree of knowledge, but it's something that really not a lot of people are talking about. And before we move on to the research findings, the Google announcement about quantum computing this week that happened, I think, on Monday, the Willow breakthrough, it is probably one of the most significant scientific developments for decades, if it's real, right? Because what it will probably enable is some mind-boggling new discoveries, innovations, just because of the sheer computing power of this. I mean, I can't give you the metrics or give you the details, but they just had a very significant breakthrough in quantum computing this week, and it will continue to sort of reverberate in various fields for a generation at least, and enable all kinds of things. And it's just not something that people are talking about because it's too complicated, or it's too black box, or too obscure. And the guy who's the head of the quantum computing division at Google said, this go to the blog post. He said, this proves the existence of the multiverse, is what he said, which is kind of a wacky sci-fi statement.
So 2 things about this. One is these technologies take 7 to 10 years to have an impact in our world, or 5 to 10 years, right? And the other question I have is whether Google is the company that will ultimately produce those epic changing results. Look at transformer technology, which is the underlying research needed to do large language models, which Google was not first to market with, doesn't seem to be best at leveraging, but that's all Google's research. ChatGPT is based on that.
Right. That opened the door.
It opened the door to the whole new
So this will be a similar thing. I mean, this is,
it is hardware though, and hardware is much different than software, right? And it may not be as easily replicable or leveraged.
You'll need a ton of money, but there are folks that do have that. I mean, this could enable the rise of the thinking machines and Skynet and all of this stuff too, which is something we got to be wary about.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.